have to fear is
In war,
fear itself.
there is no substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we've earned, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to the intersection of faith and politics. This is WallBuilders Live. You can find out more about us at our website, wallbuilderslive.com, and also at wallbuilders.com. Also on Facebook, you can comment there. And if you have questions you'd like to send in, you can send those to radio@wallbuilders.com. I'm Rick Green here with David Barton and Tim Barton. You found us on a Friday. And on Fridays, we like to do what we call Good News Friday, giving you good news from around the nation. Hey, guys, there's a lot of people that do a little bit of what we do, but they're doomsdayers. Everything's falling apart. America's done for, grab your guns and canned food, go hide out at the ranch. I mean, they just depress everybody. We don't want to be like that. There's a lot of good stuff out there. We need to be like Joshua and Caleb and look at what God's doing in our country.
Good stuff really helps in the encouragement process. There was a great study done some years ago about a guy and the study was this guy would go out and hire people to do particular jobs. And it was kind of a setup. And so one of the jobs he did was he hired people to dig post holes right at the shoreline as the tide would come in. And so he paid them really high, like 3 times higher than minimum wage. And they would dig post holes, and he wanted a certain number of post holes, but as the tide would come in, it'd fill them all up. And it got to where it didn't matter how much he paid, these guys didn't want to do the job because it was a useless job. The holes got filled up. And the point was when you think that what you're doing doesn't make any difference, and when you think that what's going on around you is not profitable, you just don't want to do it. Doesn't matter how much they pay you. That's kind of the way good news is. If you get some good news, it really encourages you. You think, I can make a difference. I can go do something. And that's why what Joshua and Caleb did was so significant. Even though it didn't swing the people in their direction, it certainly swung God in their direction. So God said, you two guys get to go in. Everybody else stays out. And so that's the reason to have good news. Even if we feel like we're in the battle alone, we still got to have the good news going.
Yeah, there may be bad news out there, but there's still a lot of good stuff happening as well.
Well, Joshua and Caleb said, yep, those giants were really, really, they were real big. But that's not a problem. With us and God, we can whip the giants. And so they didn't deny what was there, and they agreed with the factual report. They just had a different conclusion on how things would turn out.
Guys, let me throw in too that good news is not ignorance of the problems.
That's right. It's not Pollyanna.
We're not burying our head in the sand, but it's also not just a notion that you have to keep a positive perspective in the midst of all the bad things happening, because the reality is there's a lot of good things happening too. And so keeping the good news on the forefront is not just an encouragement that we need to have the right perspective, but it really should be an encouragement that we have some things going the right direction. In the midst of all the problems, everything is not a problem, and there's lots of positive things. But even if we were in a situation where we're seeing more negative than positive, you have to have that Joshua and Caleb mentality that the problems aren't bigger than God. In this situation, though, there is a lot of good things happening that people just don't hear about.
Well, and I mentioned the Pollyanna type thing, that we're not being Pollyannish, but I suddenly thought about that, and as an old movie connoisseur, yeah, we are. Pollyanna, for people who have not seen that old movie, they ought to see that movie. But it's a kid that was in poverty, that was an orphan kind of a situation, that kept looking for good everywhere she went. And it turned the whole town around where they started seeing good things they had not noticed before. It's not that they weren't there. It's that they were focused on the negative. She was focused on the positive. So when people say, well, it's a Pollyannish attitude, well, that didn't deny the bad that was there, because she was in the middle of living it out herself. But it did see the good that was going on. And when you have that, it makes a real difference when you can see those good things that are happening.
You're much more likely at that point to take action to have more of that good. If you only look at the negative, you get swallowed up by it. You become depressed, just like the children of Israel did. So, yeah, absolutely. We want to focus in on a lot of that positive. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, you guys have a lot of good news to share with us. You're listening to WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. The teachings of God's Word are the best friend civil government has, because these teachings deal with the heart. Only by dealing with the heart can crime be prevented, for as Jesus explained in Matthew 5, all crime comes from the heart. Understanding this, Daniel Webster, the great defender of the Constitution, once declared, "The cultivation of the religious sentiment represses licentiousness. It inspires respect for law and order and gives strength to the whole social fabric. Whatever makes men good Christians makes them good citizens. Indeed, it is not the good Christians whom the police arrest for armed robbery, gang activity, or other such crimes. Understanding this, the Founding Fathers encouraged religious instruction, for as Daniel Webster so accurately noted, good Christians make good citizens."
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. It's Good News Friday, and we were talking earlier about the importance of having good news. Now let's give folks some good news, guys.
Let's do a little election preview. Well, not preview. Election's coming up in a few weeks.
This better be good news.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the election is going to be real good news in November. We'll see. There's a lot out there. And by the way, in a number of states, you have really close competitive races. And one of the things we're working real hard on this year is making sure that everyone has voters' guides so they can make informed decisions. So go to things like ChristianVoterGuide.com. You can get a voter guide for your state. You can see who's up in your state and where they stand on many issues. We're working with state organizations across the country. But I'm going to jump into West Virginia for a minute because the states now are all done with their primaries. Across the country, whether you want to go from Florida all the way to Hawaii, you want to go from Alaska down to Texas, all the primaries are over. And interesting what happened. Rick, you got Patriot Academy. What age kids you deal with there?
16 up to 25.
Tim, how old do you have to be to vote in America?
I feel like this is a trick question. 18.
18. It's a trick question because most people don't know the answer constitutionally. So, I say that because we've seen that 62% of the nation cannot name the three branches of government. So, having said that, West Virginia, in the primary, we now have a 17-year-old state legislator in West Virginia. She couldn't even vote for herself, but she's now a state legislator. She ran on a real simple platform. Sarah Blair ran pro-life, Second Amendment, pledged not to go negative, and she gave people her cell phone number so they could talk directly to her. And she beat the incumbent in the campaign.
Wow.
Gotta love that.
That is great news. I think I'd be a little embarrassed if I were the incumbent. You must have not done a good job at all.
Oh, he had to seriously not consider her an opponent. And by the way, this was a really super expensive campaign. She spent $4,800 in it, and he spent $1,800 on defending his seat.
Wow.
So,
For a state legislative seat.
That tells you he didn't think it was any kind of opposition. But I love the fact that we've got young people running on a Second Amendment pro-life platform.
Absolutely.
Even before they're old enough to vote.
Absolutely.
She's going to be making laws now, and she can't even vote for the election. So I love this. It's a great story.
I would like to meet her parents and her youth pastor because somebody's doing a great job.
That's right.
No doubt.
That's right.
No doubt. That's great.
Okay, well, Rick, I got another one. Another piece of good news. This one comes from Alliance Defending Freedom. And we've talked about it many times, that one of the great groups that fights to defend religious liberties and freedoms. And they actually just came out with a press release announcing that they are now 20 wins and 0 losses against the Obama administration with the abortion pill mandate. Wow. They represented names that people probably recognize, the Conestoga Woods, that the family who owns the business in Pennsylvania. But now they just had a victory with Louisiana College. That Obama administration says, nope, you have to have these abortifacients. And the college said, we don't want to do that. And Alliance Defending Freedom represented them. And now they are 20 wins and 0 losses. So the great news is that we are having courts recognize this right of conscience and religious liberty when it comes to organizations.
Well, actually, Tim, that's really kind of old news because that was the lead story on CNN the other night that ADF is now 20 to 0 against the Obama administration.
I'm sure it was.
So MSNBC probably covered that too?
Yeah, MSNBC had it.
I'm
and
embarrassed
Huffington
now.
Post carried it.
Oh,
and,
no.
I mean,
I think they actually did a 2-hour special on that.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, Politico
That's
had
embarrassing.
the whole thing out. I mean, it was...
Katie Kirk probably carried that one a long time.
It was,
oh, my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, you're really repeating old news now.
Yeah,
so.
my bad. 20 wins, 0 losses. Okay, we'll move on.
Wouldn't you like to have a 20-0 record? I mean, who wouldn't like that?
Oh, man. Yeah, well, anywhere in the major leagues, you would take that. Certainly in baseball, you would take that in basketball, you'd take that in football.
Boxing?
in boxing, but in the legal community, I mean, that's really hard when you've got so many hundreds of courts with judges appointed by everybody from Carter all the way through Obama, that you end up in, you don't know whose court, and you are 20-0 with that kind of opposition. That's amazing.
And let me just throw in too, this is one of the amazing things about these religious liberty organizations is their success rate. Because this is not just unique for Alliance Defending Freedom.
That's
you look
true.
at Liberty Counsel, you look at Liberty Institute, some of these organizations, Liberty Institute with Kelly Shackelford in Dallas, these guys have a 99 point something, like 99.8, I mean, just ridiculous win percentage.
For nearly 10,000 cases.
They're undefeated against the ACLU. I mean, these guys are amazing. And so what it tells us is that we really are on the side of right, and the First Amendment, history, precedent, Constitution, it really does support these things. It's just that we don't hear this in schools and from professors and from the media, but really truth is on our side in these situations, and we are seeing that in court cases.
And what we hear with every one of these groups is the biggest trouble they have, the biggest reason they lose is because people won't fight. If people fight and they get into court, they win. If people say, well, I don't want my kid to have to go through that, so he just won't say he got at graduation, or, they back down, and that's where we don't win the cases.
And it's yeah, exactly. It's not that they lose the case in the courtroom. They lose the case before it ever makes it to the courtroom.
That's right.
Because someone says, we're going to sue you and take you to court. And these guys are going, let's do it. Let's go to court. And we have people get scared going, oh, no, I couldn't. Well, these law organizations defend for free people in these situations. And so really, if you want a surefire to win, go to court, because this is where they win.
Man, if we could just get more people to take the cases, then especially when it comes to the pulpit freedom deal, if we could get more of those cases to actually go all the way through, we could get the precedents that we need to win for the next 20 years.
By the way, I was with Brad Dacus last night in California. He runs Pacific Justice Institute.
Yeah, another great legal organization.
Great one. They now have 1,000 affiliate attorneys in that organization.
I didn't know they had gotten that big.
Oh, yeah, 1,000 affiliate attorneys. They are the guys who work in the Ninth Circuit.
Man.
And they have to work in the Ninth Circuit, but they got 1,000 attorneys, and even in the Ninth Circuit, their record is unbelievable. And by the way, we got to get him on. He's defending a guy right now. I'll just tell you what he told me, and I had to chew on this for a while to think about all the implications. But he's defending a scientist who has discovered a triceratops skeleton of a dinosaur that still has soft tissue in it.
Well, global warming preserves tissue for billions of years.
Billions, yeah.
Right. So Al Gore nailed it. The reason that that doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make. But think about that. See, we're told these dinosaurs are billions and billions of years old, and now we got soft tissue that's been preserved in this dinosaur skeleton. You go to the park in Glen Rose where you have a dinosaur footprint and a human footprint in the same mud strata that they have there at Glen Rose. It may turn out.
Now, why is he having to defend him? Is there a fight over who?
Well,
there's
a fight. Yeah, there's a fight over what happened with it, and he's a Christian guy, and because he's a Christian guy, he couldn't have really found this. And I'm not sure what all the legal implications.
We need to get him on.
We got to get Brad on, because I mean, just what this does to the evolution argument, and the carbon dating billions of years kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Soft tissue in a dinosaur skeleton that will revolutionize science if they give it a fair look. They may just dismiss out of hand, but that's amazing.
That in and of itself is good news. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, more good news for you here on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Christians have always believed that the greatest life-changing experience available to any individual is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and the testimonies of numerous converts confirm the dramatic changes which often accompany salvation. One such testimony of change comes from founding father Noah Webster, who explained, "I was led by a spontaneous impulse to repentance, prayer, and entire submission and surrender of myself to my Maker and Redeemer. I now began to understand and relish many parts of the Scriptures which before appeared mysterious and unintelligible. In short, my view of the Scriptures, of religion, of the whole Christian scheme of salvation, and of God's moral government are very much changed. The power of God to change a life yielded to Him was just as evident at the time of the Founding Fathers as it still is today."
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. It's Good News Friday. Guys, where are we going next with good news?
Going back to another primary election, and this primary election again vindicates what is starting to be a growing groundswell in grassroots. But in Arizona, you had two guys running, an incumbent running to defend Common Core and the challenger running to overturn Common Core. And the incumbent got his head handed to him in a big way, 42-57. They didn't see that coming, but it does indicate the groundswell that's out there with Common Core. And I'll tell you that the event that I helped do with Glenn Beck, we had in 700 theaters. A lady who was one of his key guests on that does not like Glenn, doesn't agree with him politically. She's on the liberal side of everything. He's on the conservative side. And they both totally agree on Common Core and that it's bad for kids. And that's why you're seeing more and more teachers now. The more people study this and find out about it, the less good it looks. It's only good for the bureaucrats and the educrats right now, for the elitists, quite frankly, the progressive elitists. And so even those that are on the liberal side, and not all liberals are progressives. I mean, there's a distinction. But the progressives love this. But even liberals aren't liking where this is taking kid and what it's doing with high-stakes testing and this cookie-cutter approach. So just to say, there's another victory. It's unheralded, but it's just an indication of the fact. And by the way, that's why we've seen so many states in this last year dump Common Core. You've had Indiana, Oklahoma, Louisiana, South Carolina. Ohio has got a vote coming up on this. Georgia worked really hard on it. So across the nation now, people are backing out of Common Core at a fairly rapid rate.
Excellent news. And I'm wondering, David, when you talk about the cookie-cutter approach on Common Core, I mean, with all the technology we've got now and all the different options out there, it seems like we ought to be able to zero in on the student themselves and have more options instead of trying to treat them all the same and run them through the exact same system.
You know, one of the things that really, really, really intrigues me, and I would love to go spend several weeks doing this at some point, is across North Dakota and South Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana, they still have one-room schoolhouses. Now, if you remember back to one-room schoolhouses in the early founding, you're talking about 30, 40 kids in school, and you're teaching third grade math and eighth grade math at the same time in the classroom. You have every kid from every level in the same class, so when you're doing instruction, everybody gets it. Now, somehow we managed to make individuals out of every one of those kids. And wherever they were, we were able to touch them with teachers in the classroom. No cookie-cutter approach. Everybody got touched. And if you doubt that, simply go we put a bunch of these up on WallBuilders' website. We have a list of these 8th grade exit exams that were taken in these states that had one-room schoolhouses. And 8th grade was as high as you went in school until about 1920. That was the end of school's 8th grade. And so the 8th grade exit exam is postdoctoral stuff in many colleges today. And so this one-room schoolhouse approach where you deal with kids individually, and I would just love to sit down and see logistically how it works. You know, how these teachers, but they do that big time still in a number of those rural states. And that's a great indication that you don't have to do a cookie cutter and you get great results when you don't. But imagine the creativity of having to teach all subjects at the same time to all kids from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. They're all in the same classroom, all hearing the same stuff, and you got to meet each kid at their need level with whatever their subject is.
And probably good for those kids having interaction with younger and older, and some of them mentoring younger kids. And
that's what happens because your 6th graders start teaching the 2nd graders the math tables, and your 5th graders start teaching the 1st graders the parts of speech, and your 6th graders start helping with cursive handwriting on the second. You know, it's just you learn so much more when you get to teach, and we know that as public speakers. When you speak, you learn so much. And so it really is cool that we had that model. It worked for 3.5 centuries. It's still working today in the states that have it. But we've gotten in this consolidation thing of, well, we need fewer schools and we need the ones we have to be a lot more bigger and a lot more centralized. And that centralization, consolidation thing is exactly the opposite direction to go for good education.
Very quick break, guys. We'll come back for more good news here on WallBuilders Live. Have you ever wanted to learn more about the United States Constitution, but just felt like, man, the classes are boring, or it's just that old language from 200 years ago, or I don't know where to start? People want to know, but it gets frustrating because you don't know where to look for truth about the Constitution either. Well, we've got a special program for you available now called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green, and it's actually a teaching done on the Constitution at Independence Hall in the very room where the Constitution was framed. We take you both to Philadelphia, the cradle of liberty and Independence Hall, and to the WallBuilders Library, where David Barton brings the history to life to teach the original intent of our founding fathers. We call it the Quick Start Guide to the Constitution because in just a few hours through these videos, you will learn the Citizen's Guide to America's Constitution. You'll learn what you need to do to help save our constitutional republic. It's fun, it's entertaining, and it's going to inspire you to do your part to preserve freedom for future generations. It's called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green. You can find out more information on our website now at wallbuilders.com.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. It's Good News Friday, and we got one more segment of good news for you. Guys, what's next?
Well, I got a national survey that I did not want to let slip under the radar, something that probably not a lot of news stations carried, but an interesting survey where that more and more Americans are believing that they need to stand up and defend their constitutional rights. What's significant about the survey is that only 30% of people that were considered likely U.S. voters believe that government was today protecting their individual rights. 55% believe that government was the one threatening and endangering their individual rights.
Wow.
That's very significant and, by the way, promising, because if we're ever going to get government back under control, we have to realize, as Ronald Reagan said, that government is not the solution to our problems. And so in order for us to be able to diminish some of what government is doing, we have to recognize that a bigger government does not help in these individual rights. It actually hurts in our individual rights.
Wow, that's good news. People are thinking that way. They're recognizing that. That's a
the first
throwback.
step.
That's a throwback to the Declaration of Independence, and that's always healthy. I've got one here that's a really interesting one. How do I want to say this? At the election in 2012, at that point, President Obama had been involved. I think Life News had recorded 271 pro-abortion actions he had taken as president. So 271 pro-abortion.
So he was
actions.
kind of in the middle of the road on that issue.
Right.
He really straddled the fence.
He wants abortion to be rare and safe. Rare.
He wants to protect women.
Exactly.
That's what he's doing. Okay.
And he also is praying. This is amazing. But he asked God to bless the abortion industry.
Huh.
Now, that's an interesting perspective for the president to ask God to bless the abortion industry. But now this is 2 years ago, had 271 actions. So Jim Dobson is speaking at a thing, and he made the comment that President Obama is the abortion president. And it highly offended a Democrat legislator who got up and walked out. Now, I'm sorry.
I think I get that.
You get that?
Yeah.
If it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, if it says God bless abortion, if it says 271 times 2 years ago, if he says I want to be the abortion,
can we play that again? Because that really fits.
It really does.
Yeah. I like it.
So,
I like it. I think that could become our. You know, sometimes when a certain person is mentioned, there's the theme music is played or whatever.
Yeah.
Instead of that music where the president comes in normally, I forget what the hell to the chief or whatever. let's do the duck thing.
We do the duck thing. Well, it walked like a duck and it quacked like a duck. And you know, by the way, the Democrat legislator, this congresswoman said that this was supposed to be event. It was a National Day of Prayer event, and so it was supposed to be about national faith and unity. Actually, it's not. National Day of Prayer is about God. It's about God. It is about His Word and His standards. And it's about 2 Chronicles 7:14, that if we humble ourselves and repent of our wicked ways and turn from those wicked ways, He will heal our land. And if you think, the scripture says, if I regard sin in my heart, he won't hear my prayer. And if you think that you can be as pro-abortion as she is and get offended over the fact that somebody calls him the abortion president, which he is, and you think that you're going to just pray and have a time of unity and national faith, sorry, that's just not it.
But see, the problem is you were measuring him by the fruits he produced and not by what he wanted to tell you about that.
Oh, that's true. That would be the.
If you would have just listened to the fact he's trying to protect and preserve women,
then you would give him a Nobel Peace Prize.
If you would just not measure results, the problem is you're just Wait, is that a duck again? Wait, I get it.
I thought maybe Duck Dynasty was guest starring on the show today or something.
Is Phil here? Wait a second. Where are these guys at? Give me my shotgun. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'll camo up. I can do it.
Unfortunately, there are those that do judge him just on what he says. They give him Nobel Peace Prizes and all kinds of other things, though. So,
it's really silly too. As Christians, it's understanding that we have been called to be fruit inspectors.
Yeah.
And we cannot be so naive as to look at situations. There are certain things God blesses and certain things God doesn't bless. We want to promote what God blesses, and we know what that is by measuring the fruit that we see.
Man, that's a great point, Tim. You've been listening to WallBuilders Live, folks. You've been listening to David Barton, Tim Barton, and Rick Green. Thanks for joining us. Be sure and visit us online at wallbuilderslive.com.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting.